maybe I should also become a veteran. Thank you for this opportunity. When I was rejuggling my program with a view of being present here, I got to reflect on what you wanted to talk about. And a few of you have raised a few questions, very important questions that have to deal with our country, where it is. And it's quite apt that our Premier spoke about a Ghanaian bird, and I forget the name, that when flying forward, it's able to turn its head completely to look back. But I guess, Premier, as the bird does so, it also looks down at its present environment. And this is precisely what we should be doing as we reflect on the future of our country, which is precisely what you wanted to speak about or get us to reflect on. In order to do so more properly, we need to look back. We need to look at our current environment and then look forward. And this, for us, is a very important exercise to be involved in, because in that way we are then able to build a better life for all of our people in our country. And this year, as we all know, we are marking and celebrating 30 years of freedom and democracy. And some of you spoke about that, the speakers who stood up here. They spoke about where we've come from, where we did not even have the right to vote, and where we didn't have any rights to speak of, really. And I guess the only right we have was to breathe the fresh air that is given freely by God to all of us. Other than that, every other aspect of our life was restricted. It was denied and completely crushed. And on the 27th of April, 1994, we regained our humanity. We regained our freedom, God-given freedom, and we emerged from the ruins of apartheid as a nation, as a new nation for that matter, a nation that has risen like a phoenix from the ashes and from the burnt out area in our country. And as we mark this important milestone, we are marking this important milestone as we are preparing for the elections which are going to usher in the 7th administration and the 7th democratic elections in our country at provincial and national level are therefore extremely important, because this is an election through which we are going to have an opportunity to turn our reflections on the future direction that the country should be taking into account where we've come from. We have also an opportunity as South Africans to decide which path we choose, and also to decide which political party has both the commitment, the capability, and the capacity to make us walk that path. So on the 27th of April in 1994, we voted for a vision which Matthew Posa so eloquently spoke about, and a vision that remains at the core of the mission of the African National Congress. And that vision was a clear and simple and straightforward one, is to have a democratic South Africa, a non-racial South Africa, a non-sexist South Africa, and a prosperous South Africa. That All of that is encapsulated in the document that was adopted by our forebears in 1955, which we've dubbed the Freedom Charter. And that Freedom Charter has all those objectives and the aspirations that the African National Congress has been leading our country in and has been working to see achieved in our country as we have installed our democracy. And so we firmly remain committed to that. Over the last 6 years, we have worked to renew and to rebuild our movement. We've also worked, as the Treasurer General was saying, to root out corruption and factionalism and other destructive tendencies within our movement. And we have worked to restore the confidence of the people of South Africa, and so that they can work alongside all South Africans in overcoming the challenges that we face. And we face enormous challenges. And the Premier was very clear in his articulation of the fact that there's a lot that is being done. It's being done to address all the challenges that we face. And the work that we have undertaken to revitalize and to renew the ANC has taken place alongside the progress the ANC has made, also to grow and to transform our economy, to address challenges such as unemployment, which was raised by a journalist-looking person right at the back there. He certainly looked like a journalist to me. And I can smell them out and I see them very quickly. We have described the past 5 years as a time of recovery and rebuilding. And Matthew Posa has been saying, people often ask, what have you done in the past 30 years? And he has delineated precisely a number of things that have been done. But in the past 5 years, have been the years in which we have had to address a number of challenges. I went to Gwede Mantashe's church in Kala in the Eastern Cape, Comrade Matthew Posa. And this is the St. John's Apostolic Faith Mission, a church which has about 3 million members, which is led by a woman who's 89 years old, who looks 75. Clearly 75, she can still walk, but with a stick, but she's still lucid. And in her sermon, she said, President, you got into office faced with a number of challenges. But I don't say that they face me, it's challenges that faced our country. And I've enumerated up to 20 challenges that faced our country in the past 6 years. And as I enumerate them, I'd like to then say, what did we do to address those challenges? The first was state capture. In the past few years, we've faced the specter of state capture, where we had to deal with state capture and respond to what state capture has done in our country. And I can say without any equivocation that one of the things that we did was to stop state capture. We stopped it in its tracks. And those who had all those horrible designs on our country, on our government, and on our economy, we stopped them in their tracks. And some who were like the faces of state capture have run away. But we also know that some still remain embedded in the networks that were set up during that period. And those are precisely those that we are pursuing, aided by the Zondo Commission we've identified precisely what was done. And the process of investigation and even of prosecuting those who were involved in state capture is ongoing. People often say, well, we're not seeing much that is being done about corruption. I had the occasion to read an article that was written by a leading journalist in our country, Mr. De Deut, who is not a great supporter of the governing party or the government. And he said, in talking to the National Prosecuting Agency and also talking to people who work in there, including the head, Shamila Batoyi, he came to the conclusion that that agency which had been captured, one of the many agencies that were captured, has been restored to what we envisaged in our Constitution, to be an independent institution that will deal with prosecutorial matters without any interference from politicians, but more particularly from the head of state. And he said it was a joy for him to find that out, which confirmed to him that we are serious about fighting corruption. Which also said, in the end, the independence and non-interference of that institution basically means that we are going to pursue those. As one questioner then raised about corruption. And let me immediately say, by the way, corruption is not only to be found in government. Corruption is also in the private sector. And in many ways, it originates from the private sector, because it is those who are in the private sector who seek to corrupt those who are in government. That's how it happens. So quite often, and by the way, let me immediately give a preamble. There's always been corruption in South Africa. The apartheid government was inherently corrupt itself, and those who were involved in that government were hugely corrupt. The problem is the media was not independent enough to talk about the corruption that prevailed at that time. So when people talk about corruption, they talk about it as though it is the ANC-led government that has been more corrupt than any other. But my good friends, corruption originates from the private sector, and it is often not spoken about. And it also happens through people who have been corrupted and who have evil intents also in the public sector without giving them any free pass. And dealing with corruption has been one of the areas that I have focused on, that we have focused on as government. And that is why in dealing with state capture, we said we will ensure that we reform the NPA, we give the Hawks all the power and also reform them, and the police and all state agencies that have to do with criminal justice. Having done all that, we are then able to say they must do their work. They must get on with their work, because the president cannot be, and Matthew Posa will know this as a lawyer, the president cannot be a policeman, cannot be the prosecutor, cannot be the jury, and cannot be the judge. Cannot be. But what the president can be is to enable the prosecuting authorities to do their work, and to do it freely without any form of interruption or interference. What the president or the government can do is to enable the police, the Hawks, and all of those to do their work, and to enable the judiciary to be fully strengthened to do its work. So state capture having been one of the key challenges that we faced, we have been able to stop it in its tracks. You will have listened to President Thabo Mbeki speaking the other day, setting out precisely how state capture actually happened, and he characterizes it as counter-revolution. How SARS was captured, how they almost captured Treasury as well, how a number of other departments were captured. We have stopped that in its tracks, and we have sought to reverse that in many government institutions and have been very successful. For instance, SARS has returned to its glory days and even surpassed its glory days by collecting more taxes than the previous eras that it has been through. And that has happened because we dealt with state capture. And that is something we as South Africans must recognize. And then we went through a period of COVID. And when we faced the challenge of COVID, when 100,000 South Africans died, where many more could have died, we took action. Without any doubt, we took the best actions that we could and came up with a stimulus package that amounted to about 11% of our GDP, with a view of assisting businesses, of assisting workers. And in the course of that, we also had to assist unemployed people and came up with the 350 that we paid out to about initially 11 million people. That was the very first time that South Africa responded to a crisis in the way that we did. And through the efforts that we made, we saved lives. We assisted businesses. And no other government since democracy had faced a crisis like that. And we faced it head on. And I think we did succeed in assisting the people of South Africa to go through COVID. And we faced unrest, unprecedented unrest, which cost about 50 billion rand to the GDP of our country. And as we faced unrest, we had to come up with solutions. So what I'm saying is that we faced challenges, and in the course of that, we came up with solutions that were directed at addressing that challenge. Yes, the unrest, July 2021, found us weakened. Our security forces were not prepared, and our policing, rapid police system was not ready. Our intelligence was not up to scratch. But what did we do? We set up a task force to examine exactly what went wrong with a view of correcting it. And now we are more ready. We are more prepared. But what was wonderful with that whole thing, bad as it was, is that the people of South Africa stood up and said, we are not going to countenance the destruction of our democracy, because there were people who were hell-bent in destroying our democracy deliberately, and we are still going to go after them. We are still investigating that, and they will also be prosecuted in time to come. But the people of South Africa stood up and said no. They wanted to destroy businesses and shopping malls, and people stood outside and said, we are not going to allow you to do that. And that, my good friends, was progress as well in the past 6th administration. Then we faced floods. Climate change descended on our country in one of the most unprecedented ways, where many people, close to 400 people, died, and billions of infrastructure were destroyed. And we also had to respond to that, and respond to that we did. Then we faced the mother of all challenges, which is load shedding. Earlier, the lights went off, and many of you said, oh my God, load shedding is back again. But load shedding, we've been free of load shedding for about 40 days. And we hope that we will be able to go through the winter with lesser levels of load shedding. Because what did we do? As we faced load shedding challenges, we came up with an energy action plan, which I announced in Parliament and I announced publicly. And that has led us to reform our electricity architecture. We've now completely transformed our ESCOM and it's now divided into 3 portions, focusing on what needs to be done. On generation, we've now got renewable energy, and we've now gotten up to 170 billion rand investments in renewable energy, and it is increasing. And it is now going to lead to more energy availability factor. The other day we hit, was it 60% or so of energy available factor, meaning that we are beginning to get our power stations to work a lot better. So we faced a crisis and we immediately came up with solutions. Regardless of how the crisis occurred, we've learned a lot of lessons, and we are now moving forward, determinedly moving forward, repairing South Africa. And we have dubbed the 6th administration as being an era of rebuilding, reconstruction, renewal, and recovery. And that is what we focus on as we have faced all these challenges. Corruption is one of those challenges that we faced, because it seemed like corruption had reared its head in a very ugly way. But we have addressed that. We also face gender-based violence. You might recall the young women who were getting killed brutally, and the women of our country rose up and said, we need this to be brought to an end. And we had to set up a national strategic plan, which is now being implemented. National strategic plan which was crafted by the women of our own country, and they crafted it because they wanted a response, and we've had to respond to that. A number of you are business people, and one of you spoke about the challenges and difficulties that you have in your businesses in relation to red tape. Wherever you go, you need to get a permit, and it takes forever to get a permit from local government, from provincial government, and from national government. It has taken many people up to 3 years to get a permit just for water. And addressing red tape has been one of the key objectives that we've had. We've set up an office that just deals with red tape. I know at the provincial level, it is something that is being addressed, and the Premier and those he works with have been focusing on this, on addressing red tape. We've also faced logistics problems. Many of you export your goods outside the country. Our ports have not been working as well as they should. Our rail has actually not been working as it should. And all this has also been a result of state capture. But we are now working together with business, have set up a logistics common committee between business, labor, and government. We're working together to transform Transnet. And Transnet is beginning, and our ports, to receive and process many more ships as they come in. And our rail is now also being reformed, and we're doing a lot of things, including on passenger rail. I've had my brother there speaking about trains. Not about trains, but about taxis. And the initiative that we embarked upon, which the Premier can respond to more directly on Rea Vaya, for instance, is to bring in taxi owners as shareholders. And I know that the challenges of running businesses is one of the things at a big level that is a major challenge, and it is not working as well as it should. But the Premier and his team are working on finding more enduring solutions. One of the other challenges that we have faced in the past 5 years has been service delivery at local government level. Many of our municipalities have been in shambles. They have not been delivering services as well as they should. Water has been a challenge here in Tshwane, for instance, and just our roads and refuse collection has been a major problem. Do we have solutions for all that? Yes, we do, because we want to strengthen local government, and one of the Premier's tasks has been in addressing the weaknesses of our municipalities and focusing on strengthening our municipalities. And of course, one of the challenges that we've had is the coalition governments. The coalition governments that we've had, the outcome of the last municipal elections, has not served the best in terms of the interests of South Africans, because you've had a plethora of parties that now want to run a city or a municipality. And frankly speaking, it's been shambles. And our people are the ones who suffer the most, because you've got too many fingers in the pie. Everybody has a finger in the pie, and some of those fingers are corrupted fingers, and it's not been working as well as we want. That is where the problem has been. Now, do we have solutions for that? Our people have solutions. And that is why we are even
that
saying
now. That is ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa speaking to the Business Fraternity Luncheon. And of course, he's listed a number of challenges that the ANC government has been able to overcome, including, of course, load shedding, as well as state capture, COVID-19, rail and port challenges. He says, of course, that corruption is not limited to this government, but has, in fact, been an inherent system within the apartheid government. He also speaks, of course, around these issues as we head to those crucial provincial and national elections. And, of course, tomorrow, as you know, he is going to be signing into law the NHI bill. And we continue here on the show, as well as the channel, to get reaction in as far as that is concerned.